Huntsman is out, but it probably won't make much difference.
Santorum gets a big endorsement. That may not make much difference either.
And meanwhile, Barack Obama flirts with the magic re-election number. I'm Frank Newport, Gallup editor-in-chief.
I'm Susan Page, Washington Bureau Chief for USA Today.
And this is Election Matters. Well, Susan, Jon Huntsman is out of the race. Not a great shock. He endorsed Mitt Romney. That's perhaps not a shock either, but I don't think any of this is going to make a bit of difference. Jon Huntsman, in our tracking at max since December 1st, got 3% of the vote, Republicans nationally, and he was down to 2% in our last 5-day average through Sunday. So he doesn't have a lot of support to give to his erstwhile opponent, Mitt Romney.
Well, you know, that's certainly true, and he never made the case to Republican voters that he was one of them, that he was an acceptable nominee, acceptable candidate. But I do think it contributes to the perception that Mitt Romney is becoming the consensus candidate, that he's the inevitable nominee, the fact that yet another competitor has dropped out and has endorsed him. So I think it's helpful to rip Mitt Romney in that way. But the idea that he's going to deliver a big block of votes, I don't think that's the case.
Yeah, and actually, if you look at our positive intensity number, you know, we track that through December. Oftentimes, Huntsman was getting more negative than positive favorable impressions from Republicans, which means he actually had a pretty negative image. A lot of that came because he was perceived as a moderate. He'd worked for Obama as his ambassador to China, but it may be that an endorsement is something you don't want as a candidate. Oh, I'm sure Romney will be happy with it. And as you say, maybe a psychological benefit.
You know, Huntsman's policy positions were pretty conservative, but his tone was moderate and civil, and he lacked kind of the Tea Party anger that all the other candidates adopted to one degree or another.
Yeah, I remember early on, at least one Time columnist said there are 3 governors who are going to vie for the nomination. Not Santorum, excuse me, but Mitt Romney, Huntsman, and Pawlenty. And of course, Pawlenty and Huntsman are gone, leaving only Romney. Now, speaking of Santorum, an endorsement from the heart of Texas over the weekend.
Evangelical Christian leaders who have struggled to unite behind a candidate got together as supermajority, voted to endorse Rick Santorum, the former Pennsylvania senator, although not on the first ballot. And it strikes me as being a little late in the process for the conservative Christians to try to get together behind one nominee. That's been a big advantage for Mitt Romney, that Newt Gingrich and Rick Perry and Santorum have vied and divided up that part of the electorate. Yeah,
and keep in mind, these leaders who met down on a ranch in Texas don't officially represent anybody, so it's not like the Vatican, the Pope saying we're going to support X or Y. It's just some conservative Christian leaders giving their support to Santorum. Now, a couple of points in the data. South Carolina is a very religious state, 7th most religious state in the country, based on our analysis from our aggregate tracking. So clearly there are more highly religious Republican voters down in South Carolina than there were in particular compared to New Hampshire. But, Susan, you and I were talking about this. When we look at the national data, although Santorum does better among highly religious Republicans, those who attend church weekly, so does Mitt Romney. Not better, but he maintains his strength, even among these highly religious Republicans.
Romney's done all right among these voters. It gave him so much trouble 4 years ago, the first time he ran for president. He did all right in Iowa, where they are a big part of the caucus attendees, and all right in New Hampshire, where they're a much smaller proportion. Interesting, you mentioned South Carolina being the 7th most religious states. Very much a Southern characteristic. It shows you why religious conservatives play such a big part in the GOP, which is a party with a Southern base. 6 of those states are in the South. The 7th is Utah.
Absolutely. But again, Mitt Romney, you would think, would suffer perhaps among highly religious Republicans. This is nationally. He doesn't. It's like flat. He does just as well among highly religious Republicans as among those who seldom or never attend church. So it's remarkable, his support and how strong it is among these religious Republicans.
And it may be because we see with highly religious people, as with all Americans, the economy is such a big concern. It's really trumped some other concerns.
Yeah, and speaking of Mitt Romney, 37% in our tracking for a couple of days now. That's the highest he's had. It ties the highest any candidate's had in our tracking all along. He's now at about 23 points above his nearest competitor, which would be Santorum and Gingrich. So what we're seeing after New Hampshire is Romney climbing. Looks almost inevitable.
Almost inevitable. We know from past years that the Republican candidate who leads after New Hampshire has always gotten the nomination since 1976. You know, it's not true for the Democrats. That might be an interesting comparison why it doesn't work with Democrats. Democrats still float around after New Hampshire. But for Republicans, in the past, at least, they've settled on a nominee right after New Hampshire, and they've stuck with him.
Yeah, I look back, McCain did not have this big a lead in January back in '08. So Romney, again, a 23-point lead based on history, as you said, among Republicans. He looks like a strong, high probability. It is a strong, high probability chance that he'll be the nominee. And he'll have to face Barack Obama, will he not?
He will.
Who's going to win that race next November, Susan?
Yeah. I think only time will tell would be the safe answer.
Oh, that's a chicken's answer,
yes,
right?
It's true.
But there's some positive signs for Obama, at least in his approval rating.
There is. Obama in your tracking data is up to 46%. You know, that's not quite safe territory, but we know that George W. Bush was reelected with an approval rating of 48%. So Barack Obama is getting close to the point where he doesn't seem quite as imperiled by his standing, his job approval standing with the American people.
No, absolutely. And he was at 47 in January, has been at least in one of our reports. And remember, Bush at 48 won re-election. We say 50%, but Obama's getting closer. And of course, if the economy keeps picking up, and a lot of our own economic confidence measures here at Gallup show that's all good for Barack Obama. So if I were in the Barack Obama camp right now, I would be saying, hey, we've got some positive indicators regardless of who gets the GOP nomination.
And you know, we've talked before about when it starts to really matter. And the history indicates that about in March, people's attitudes get pretty set. So Barack Obama has a little bit of time, but not a lot of time, to improve his standing and improve perceptions of the economy.
We'll keep monitoring that, and of course we'll be here next week after South Carolina, and then Florida, right?
And then Florida on the 31st.
Could be a moot point. What happens in Florida?
Interesting, after all this buildup, the Republican race could be over in a matter of weeks.
That's right. We have, I would think Rick Perry be the next to drop out perhaps after South Carolina, but we'll wait and see. All right, I'm Frank Newport, Gallup Editor-in-Chief.
I'm Susan Page, Washington Bureau Chief for USA Today.
And this is Election Matters.